welcome to our town hall with Joe Biden. Mr. Vice President, welcome to you.
Good to be with you.
We're here with a group of Pennsylvania voters. You can see they're all appropriately socially distanced tonight. And they're a group of, some are voting for you. Some have said they're voting for President Trump. Some are still undecided. And we're going to try to take questions from as many of them as we can tonight. And we're going to start with Nicholas Fedden. He's from Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. That's close to here in Philadelphia. You're a Democrat.
I am a Democrat. Thank you, George. Mr. Vice President, every day my wife and I are in disbelief at the lack of coordinated federal action on COVID-19. We know that your administration would follow the science. My question for you is two parts. First, looking backwards to when this country first became aware of COVID-19, what would following the science have meant in terms of actual policy? And then, looking forward, what would your administration do in terms of following the science with real concrete policies that haven't been done by the current administration?
Well, first of all, going back, the fact is that the president was informed how dangerous this virus was. And all the way back in the beginning of February, I argued that we should be keeping people in China. And we had set up in our administration a pandemic office within the White House. There were 44 people on the ground. I suggested we should be seeking, and I didn't hold public office. I was a former vice president. I suggested we, in fact, ask to have access to the source of the problem. And to the best of our knowledge, Trump never pushed that. All those 44 people came home, never got replaced. And in addition to that, I pointed out that I thought in February, I did a piece for USA Today saying this is a serious problem. Trump denied it. He said it wasn't. We later learned that he knew full well how serious it was when he did an interview with Bob Woodward. And at the time, he said he didn't tell anybody because he was afraid Americans would panic. Americans don't panic.
Those with the most severe form of the disease. Yeah. How severe were your symptoms? In particular, did you have pneumonia?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel strong. I had a little bit of a temperature. The doctors at the White House are fantastic, as you can imagine, and they really didn't want to take a chance, and they said, let's go to the hospital. I said, that's okay. I'm going to respond to what you say. And we went over to Walter Reed, where you have tremendous professionals. They gave me Regeneron and Remdesivir, both. And all I know is I felt good the following day. I felt really good.
Did the doctors ever tell you that they saw pneumonia on your lung scans?
No, but they said the lungs are, a little bit different, a little bit perhaps infected. And
infected with?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't do too much asking. I really felt good. I didn't have much of a problem with the lungs. I did have a little bit of a temperature. Obviously, I felt there was something missing, and then I tested positive.
Well, let's talk about testing, because there's a little bit of confusion about this, and I think we can clear it up.
Yeah, and there shouldn't.
Your first positive test was Thursday, October 1st, okay? When was your last negative test? When did you last remember having a negative test?
Well, I test quite a bit, and I can tell you that before the debate, which I thought it was a very good debate, and I felt fantastically. I had no problem before.
Did you test the day of the debate?
I don't know. I don't even remember. I test all the time. But I can tell you this. After the debate, I guess a day or so, I think it was Thursday evening, maybe even late Thursday evening, I tested positive. That's when I first found out about it.
Back to the debate, because the debate commission's rules, it was the honor system, would be that you would come with a negative test. You say you don't know if you got a test on the day of the debate?
I had no problem. Again, the doctors do it. I don't ask them. I test all the time, and
did you take a test though on the day of the debate?
If you ask the doctor, they'll give you a perfect answer. But they take a test, and I leave, and I go about my business.
Did you take a test on the day of the debate? I guess is the bottom line.
I probably did, and I took a test the day before and the day before, and I was always in great shape. And I was in great shape.
They needed, so the Congress passed a couple $1 trillion worth of help, and what happened was most of that money, significant portion of that money, went to the very wealthiest corporations in the country. Didn't get to the mom and pop stores. So you had 1 in 5, 1 in 6 minority businesses closing, many of them permanently, people being laid off. And then what happened was when the first tranche of the first round of money for unemployment, enhanced unemployment, went by, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. And to the best of my knowledge, and I mean this sincerely, I can't think, I've been around for a lot of presidents, and you know a lot of presidents in a crisis. I don't ever remember one never calling the House and Senate, Republicans and Democrats together.
Let's look forward a little bit. You said that you would lock down the economy only if the scientists said it was necessary.
Well, by the way, that wasn't the context here. They said, would I lock down the economy if science said so? I said I'd follow science. But I don't think there's a need to lock down.
But I want to press you on that point.
Sure.
You've been in the Oval Office for 8 years with President Obama. He would always say that only the hard-to-solve problems get to his desk. What is most likely to happen is the scientists will disagree. The scientists will disagree with the economists. So the question is, how are you going to decide this? Who are you going to listen to? And how can you contain the pandemic without crushing the economy?
Well, you can contain the pandemic by being rational and not crush the economy. For example, I laid out a plan how you can open businesses. You can open businesses and schools if, in fact, you provide them the guidance that they need as well as the money to be able to do it. What's happening now is we know, for example, if you can open a business and you could have a sign on the door saying safe to come in, that's why people aren't going anyway even when they're open, and say because you have social distancing, you have plastic barriers, when you go to the cashier, you have separators between the booths, you don't have large crowds, you reduce the size, the number of people you can have in the restaurant, you make sure there's testing, that's a really critical piece that he didn't do, testing and tracing, and you make sure that people are equipped, going to schools. You know, we initially said, the government initially said they were going to provide masks for every student and every teacher. Then they said, no. FEMA said, the president or whomever said, no, that's not a national emergency. Not a national...
For the next year and just stay and do nothing. And every time I go into a crowd, I was with the parents of our fallen heroes. These people are the most incredible people. And they came up to me and they would hug me and they would touch me. And I'm not going to not let them do it.
Now, there was an event with the Gold Star families the day after the Supreme Court event. A Gold Star event with the most incredible people you've ever seen. And I could have chosen not to talk to them or to keep everybody away. And you know what? And I don't think that's probably where it was caught, but maybe it was. I was going to say, you bring it up. You brought it up yourself. I mean, are you trying to suggest that? Do you believe a grieving military family gave you COVID?
No, I don't know where it came from. Okay. And you don't know where it came from, and the doctors don't know where it came from. But as the president, I have to be out there. I also know...
Well, there's no one that says you can't be out there, but it's just about wearing masks and having, for example, your rallies. Your rallies don't require masks.
No, I mean, let's see Kamala. She's got people now. People have it, and I'm not blaming her. I'm not saying, oh, she did a terrible thing. As president, I have to be out there. I can't be in a basement. I can't be locked in a very beautiful room someplace in the White House. And I want to see the Gold Star families, and I want to see everybody. And I also say to people all the time, it's risky doing it. It is risky doing it.
But as president, you're right. You want to be a leader, but you also are a leader and a setter of an example. And if you're not wearing a mask when your administration is saying best practice right now is wear a mask, no, it's not foolproof.
But many people are catching it. Many people are getting this disease that was sent to us by China, and it shouldn't have been allowed to happen. But many people are getting...
The point is that if the body of scientists say that this is what is ready to be done, and it's been tested, they've gone through the 3 phases, yes, I would take it. I'd encourage people to take it. But President Trump says things like, everything from this crazy stuff he's walking away from now, inject bleach in your arm, and that's going to work. I'm not being facetious, though. I mean, he's actually said these things. And now Regeneron is the answer. That's going to cure everything. There's 500,000 doses. We got a couple, we have more than a few million people. And most of if you notice, most of the companies who are developing these vaccines are working, they're making real progress. I meet with 4 leading scientists at least twice a week in the beginning, 4 times a week, giving us the detail on what kind of progress is being made. And right now, they do the right thing. When they run into a serious problem, they halt the test. They don't continue until they figure out what the problem was. They're not there yet. And the most scientists say it's not likely to have a vaccine that would be available until the beginning of next year, into the spring of next year. And in the meantime, what I worry about is the same thing with Regeneron, which is a useful antidote, not antidote, a useful.
Use the word cure, but we have therapies that are absolutely incredible.
I want to pick up on something you just said. You said we're rounding the corner.
I believe we're rounding the corner.
Now, 10% of the country approximately has had COVID. That means 80, 90%, 90%, let's do the math, is still vulnerable.
Right, that's
There's been some talk, including from the White House lately, that perhaps it approves of what's called herd immunity. That's where you basically just let young people and everybody get sick. You try to protect the old people and those who are sick, and hopefully it gets up to a certain level, and now we're all immune. So let's just be clear about it. It also means more deaths. Do you support herd immunity as a strategy? Essentially just let people get sick.
The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. We did the right thing. We were expected to lose 2,200,000 people and maybe more than that. We're at 210,000 people. One person is too much. It should have never happened because of China. It happened because of China. And you have to get that and understand that. But it shouldn't have happened. But we were expected to lose. If you look at the original charts from original doctors who are respected by everybody, 2,200,000
That 2 million figure, though, is if you literally did nothing. The 2 million figure is if you did absolutely nothing, it would be 2 million. The question is, should the deaths be better than 200,000 when, relative to the rest of the world, we have a worse death rate?
I left North Carolina, which I love. I left Pennsylvania. We won a big case in Michigan because that governor has a lockdown where nobody but her husband can do anything. He can go boating and do whatever he wants, but nobody else can. The fact is we're winning all these cases because it's unconstitutional what they're doing, and I think they're doing it for...
George, you and I know, and I think you do too as well, the words of a president matter.
Absolutely.
No matter whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, they matter. And when a president doesn't wear a mask or makes fun of folks like me when I was wearing a mask for a long time, then, you know, people say, well, it mustn't be that important. But when a president says, I think this is very important, for example, I walked in here with this mask, but I have one of the M95 masks underneath it. I left it in my dressing room, the room I was in before I got here. And so I think it matters what we say. And we're now learning that children are getting the virus, not with as serious consequences, but there's been no studies done yet on vaccines for children. So there's a long way to go, but we can make progress in the meantime and save lives. And the last point I'll make, if you listen to the head of the CDC, he stood up and he said, you know, while we're waiting for a vaccine, and he held up a mask. You wear this mask, you'll save more lives between now and the end of the year than if we had a vaccine. It's estimated by every major study done from the University of Washington to Columbia that if in fact we wore masks, we could save between now and the end of the year 100,000 lives.
And avoid lockdowns.
What's your next question?
Do you feel, it feels sometimes you're hesitant to do so, like you wait a beat.
Here we go again. Every time, in fact, my people came, I'm sure they'll ask you the white supremacy question. I denounce white supremacy. Okay. And frankly, you want to know something? I denounce Antifa, and I denounce these people on the left that are burning down our cities that are run by Democrats who don't know what they're doing.
While we're denouncing, let me ask you about QAnon. It is this theory that Democrats are a satanic pedophile ring and that you are the savior of that. Now, can you just once and for all state that that is completely not true and that disavow QAnon in its entirety?
I know nothing about QAnon.
I just told you.
I know very little. You told me, but what you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. I hate to say that. I know nothing about it. I do know they are very much against pedophilia. They fight it very hard, but I know nothing about it.
They believe it is a satanic cult run by the deep state.
The subject. I'll tell you what I do know about. I know about Antifa, and I know about the radical left, and I know how violent they are and how vicious they are, and I know how they're burning down cities run by Democrats, not run by Republicans.
Republican Senator Ben Sasse said, quote, QAnon is nuts, and real leaders call conspiracy theories conspiracy theories. Why not just say it's crazy and not true?
He may be right. I just don't know about QAnon.
You do know.
I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't know.
Let me ask you another thing.
Let's let's waste a whole show. You start off with white supremacy, I denounce it. You start off with something else. Let's go. Keep asking me these questions.
I do have one more in this vein.
Let me just tell you, what I do hear about it is they are very strongly against pedophilia. And I agree with that. I mean, I do agree with that, and I agree with it.
But there's not a satanic pedophile cult being run by.
I know nothing
You don't know that? Okay.
No, I don't know
You
that.
just this week.
Making sure that your home, you can pay your mortgage. You got 20 million people right now.
Mr. Vice President, let me press you on that, though.
Sure.
You're going to raise the corporate tax. You're going to raise taxes on the wealthy. Is it wise to do even that when the economy is as weak as it is right now? Another 900,000 people.
That's a great question. Moody's did an analysis of my detailed analysis of my tax plan and my economic plan. They said, I will in 4 years, Moody's, Wall Street, said I will create 18.6 million new jobs, good paying jobs, number one. Number two, and I'll increase, the GDP will grow by $1 trillion more than it would under Trump and 7 million more jobs than under Trump. And the reason is when you allow people to get back in the game and have a job, everything moves. Everything moves. Right now, you got the opposite. You had last year, during this pandemic, you had the wealthiest billionaires in the world, in the nation. They made another $700 billion. $700 billion. He talks about a V-shaped recovery. It's a K-shaped recovery. If you're on the top, you're going to do very well. And the other thing and if you're at the bottom, or you're in the middle or the bottom, your income is coming down. You're not getting a raise. I don't know what you do. You may get a raise. Hope you're a billionaire. But all kidding aside, but it's about growing the economy. And George, the way out, the reason why I'm so optimistic about economic recovery, more than I've ever been, is we have these 4 crises happening all at once, and one helps.
So will you accept the results of the election?
That's the way I want it to be. But when I see thousands of ballots, right, unsolicited ballots being given out by the millions, and thousands of them are dumped in dumpsters, and when you see ballots with the name Trump, military ballots from our great military, and they're dumped in garbage cans.
That is a handful. We could go all night, which we won't, but we could go all night, one by one, a single case, a single day. You're talking about 150 million votes. Your own FBI director says there is no evidence of widespread fraud.
Well, then he's not doing a very good job. All you have to do is pick up the papers every day. 50,000 in Ohio, the great state of Ohio. 50,000 in another location, I think North Carolina. 500,000 applications in Virginia. No, there's a tremendous problem. But let me just tell you, they talk about the peaceful transfer, right? They spied on my campaign and they got caught, and they spied heavily on my campaign, and they tried to take down a duly elected sitting president, and then they talk about, will you accept a peaceful transfer? And the answer is yes, I will. But I want it to be an honest election, and so does everybody else. When I see thousands of ballots dumped in a garbage can and they happen to have my name on it, I'm not happy about that.
But just those are there is in fact no evidence of widespread fraud, and you were sowing doubt about our democracy.
How can you say that? You do read newspapers.
I do.
You do watch the news.
Yes,
I know you read the news, but do you watch it?
I do.
Because every day they're talking about ballots that are corrupt, that are fraudulent.
And millions that are being processed right now.
But you can win a race. Take a look at me. You can win a race by 1%.
But why are you laying the groundwork for that right now? It's like if I go play tennis with my husband and I say my ankle's hurting right now.
I don't want that to happen, Savannah. I want it to be clean. I really feel we're going to win. But I want this to be clean. But it's sort of ironic that you and them talk about the peaceful transfer when I spent 3.5 years fighting off these maniacs, and now it turns out, everything's there, that they were the ones that dealt with Russia. And it's too bad. But peaceful transfer, I absolutely want that. But ideally, I don't want to transfer because I want to win.
Yes, and I think that your words will probably reassure some folks. Let's get to our first voter. We've got Jacqueline Lugo. Now, she is, I told you this audience is truly split between y'all. You are leaning Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as an independent. Jacqueline, what's your question for the president? And hold the mic up close and take off your mic because it's hard to hear out here.
Good evening.
How are you?
Welcome to Miami.
Thank you very much. It's beautiful.
Mr. President, if you knew COVID-19, as you told Bob Woodward in February,
As what?
as you told Bob Woodward in February, was airborne and deadlier than the flu, why did you only put in place a travel ban from China and not put in place other measures mitigating the spread of COVID-19, potentially saving tens of thousands of American lives?
Well, I did put it in very early, as you know. Joe Biden was 2 months behind me, and he called me xenophobic and racist and everything else because I put it in. And it turned out that I was 100% right. I also put it on Europe very early because I saw there was a lot of infection in Europe. And it's sort of an amazing question, and I appreciate the question and respect the question, but the news doesn't get out the right answer because I put on a travel ban far earlier than Dr. Fauci thought it was necessary, who I like, far earlier than the scientists. I was actually the only one that wanted to put it on, and I did it actually against the advice of a lot of people, including Nancy Pelosi, who had no clue what she was doing, and Biden. When I put on the travel ban, I put it on in January, the end of January. When I put on the travel ban, Joe Biden and others said, this is ridiculous. You don't do that. Well, Dr. Fauci said I saved thousands and thousands of lives.
Did you?
I was early. I was extremely early when I put on the travel ban.
Can I ask you, did your national security advisor on January 28th in the Oval Office warn you that this would be the greatest national security risk of your administration? He didn't say it, or you don't remember?
I read it someplace. Maybe Woodward said it or something. But no, he did not say that. But I knew it was a big threat. At the same time, I don't want to panic this country. I don't want to go out and say everybody's going to die.
Isn't there a middle ground? You don't have to mislead, but you can.
No, there's not a middle ground. You have to be safe, you have to be vigilant, and you have to be smart.
You're going to like this next couple of voters. It's a mom and a daughter.
Good.
Mom, Barbara, voted for you in 2016. She's leaning to vote for you again. Now, her daughter was too young to vote last time. She's going to vote for her first time in a presidential campaign, and she is leaning Biden. So imagine the dinner table at their house, okay? So, Barbara, why don't you go first and ask your question?
Bienvenido a Miami.
Thank you.
Mr. Trump, as a frontline ER doctor working through the coronavirus pandemic,
Right.
I know firsthand, and I've seen that many hospitals throughout the United States are suffering financial hardships. These economic effects are trickling down to the frontline workers.
Right.
We are being, across the country, frontline workers are being fired, they're being furloughed, our salaries are being cut. And this is also happening in other economic sectors as well, including the travel industry and hospitality.
Right.
My question to you is, how are you going to get the United States back on track, both in terms of the economy and the pandemic?
So it's happening. We just set a record, 11.4 million jobs. We are going to have a phenomenal third quarter, which will be announced on November 1st, just prior to the big November 3rd day, where I think you're going to see a red wave. But we're going to have a tremendous announcement, I believe. I mean, we're going to find out. But GDP is going through the roof. Jobs, real estate, houses, so many things are happening. So people were saying we were going to have a 42% unemployment. Look, this was a thing that came into
Joe Biden. We're going to get a question now from Cedric Humphrey. He's a student from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, progressive Democrat.
Don't jump, Cedric. You look like you're way up there.
I'll be okay. Thank you, George. And good evening, former Vice President Biden. Many people believe that the true swing demographic in this election will be black voters under the age of 30. Not because they'll be voting for Trump, but because they won't vote at all. I myself have had this exact same conflict. So my question for you then is, besides you ain't black, what do you have to say to young black voters who see voting for you as further participation in a system that continually fails to protect them?
Well, I say, first of all, as my buddy John Lewis said, it's a sacred opportunity and right to vote. You can make a difference. If young black women and men vote, you can determine the outcome of this election. Not a joke. You can do that. And the next question is, am I worthy of your vote? Can I earn your vote? And the answer is, there's two things I think that I care, and I've demonstrated I care about my whole career. One is, in addition to dealing with a criminal justice system to make it fair, and make it more decent, we have to be able to put black Americans in a position to be able to gain wealth, generate wealth. And so you look at what that entails. It entails everything from early education. That's why I'm supporting making sure that we in Title I schools, as you know, schools with the least tax base to be able to.
My parents are, as you heard, both frontline healthcare workers, and I've seen the physical and the mental tolls that this pandemic has taken on them firsthand, as well as the exacerbation of coronavirus due to Americans who are not wearing masks or participating in social distancing. After contracting COVID-19 yourself, has your opinion changed on the importance of mask wearing?
No, because I was okay with the masks. I was good with it, but I've heard many different stories on masks. I mean, I had, being president, you have people, they bring meals, they bring this, and I had an instance recently where a very wonderful person is bringing me a meal, and he's playing with his mask, and he's touching his mask all over the place, and then he's bringing a plate in, and I'm saying, well, I don't know if that's so good. I mean, the good news, I didn't eat it, okay? I decided not to eat it. This was a month ago, but look, you have on the masks, you have two stories. You have a story where they want, a story where they don't want. I am all for it.
I don't get that, because it's just all of your public health officials, your administration, they're in unison about this. No. They're all in unison about it. The University of Washington, which is they have a model that your coronavirus task force relies on, says that if everyone wore a mask, you could cut expected deaths in half.
And then
60,000 lives. Well, what does that mean?
Scott Atkins, if you look at Scott, Dr. Scott, he's from great guy, Stanford, he will tell you
he's
that
not an infectious disease expert.
Oh, I don't know. Look, he's an expert. He's one of the great experts of the world.
But I don't get it, because you have so much power and influence as president. You could require it at your rallies, and you could say, everyone put on a mask right now, and the University of Washington says you would save lives.
University of Washington, then you have other places say different things. You have a lot of, hey, Dr. Fauci said don't wear a mask, right?
At first, but then everybody agreed.
No, I don't know. Then he changed his mind. But then you have a report coming out 2 days ago that 85% of the people wearing masks.
I looked at that report. It's not about mask wearing. It was neutral on the question of masks.
We're on the same side. I say wear the mask. I'm fine with it. I have no problem. We're on the same
future that's burgeoning, cybersecurity, and that's what's going to help a great deal. In addition to that, if you're a young man about to graduate, or you graduated from school and you want to own your first home, or well, it's awful hard to get the money, and depending on the background, what your economic background is, to get a down payment. So we're going to guarantee first-term home buyers a $15,000 down payment for first-term home buyers. In addition to that, what all the studies now show, and I've been arguing this for a long time, is young black entrepreneurs are just as successful as white entrepreneurs or anyone else given a shot. But you can't get the money. Where do you go to get the startup money? So what President Obama and I did, we had a program where we took $1.5 billion and we invested it in all the SBAs around the country, in the state SBAs, small business associations, and that generated $30 billion came off the sideline, because if you have a guarantee of $200,000 for your new startup enterprise, young entrepreneur, you're going to be able to attract, if it's government money as a guarantee, you'll be able to attract another $100,000. It generated $30 billion. Well, I'm changing that program, and I'll get this done without much trouble, I believe, in the Congress, from $1.5 billion to $30 billion to $30 billion. That'll take $300 billion off the sideline and grow, because and for example, if you, in fact, and I were the same age, and we split our differences, and we were the same age, and we went to the same builder to buy us each the same home, but my home was in a white neighborhood on one side of a highway, and yours is in a black neighborhood, same exact home. Your home will start off being valued 29% less than my home, yet your insurance for that home will be higher. You'll be taxed more for it. We've got to end this. That's what got me involved in politics in the first place, a thing called redlining. We can change so much, that we can do so much to change the circumstances to give people a real opportunity.
Cedric, did you hear what you needed?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, do you hear what you needed to hear?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot more. If you're going to hang around afterwards, I'll tell you more.
Okay.
Let's get it.
No, but I really mean it. It is the key. Look, this is the way every other. How do most, like my dad, he lost his job up in Scranton. And it took him 3 years to be able, he moved down to Delaware, to Claymont, Delaware, a little steel town, and sent us home to our grandpop to live with him. We finally got back. We lived in apartments, became 6 and 8 housing much later. It wasn't. It was just normal apartments. But it took him 5 years to be able to buy a home. Well, we bought a 3-bedroom home with 4 kids and a grandpop living with us, but it accumulated wealth. You build up wealth. That's how middle-class folks make it. They build up wealth. Then he was able to borrow a little against that to be able to help us get to school, those kinds of things. It's about accumulating wealth. And you're behind an 8 ball. The vast majority of people of color are behind an 8 ball. And it's the same way what's going on now with all this money that's been voted. What's happened? You go to the bank, if you're a black businessman, and the president fired the only inspector general to oversee all this help coming from the Congress. And what happens?
Live in Miami with President Trump for a town hall. Thank you again, Mr. President. We have another voter now. Christy Alonzo, come on out, Christy. She is leaning slightly towards you. She says she voted for you in 2016. Christy, you ready? Take the mask off, hold the mic close, and let's hear your question.
Thank you for your service, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
We're a hard-working, middle-class family of 4. My husband and I are both self-employed, and we have to get our own individual health care. As you know, the health care costs have gone up considerably over the decades, and you had originally said you were going to repeal and replace Obamacare. What is your plan now in 2020 to make health care costs affordable for Americans like myself?
So we got rid of the individual mandate on Obamacare, which was the worst part of Obamacare, and now you could actually say it's not Obamacare, because that's how big it was, where you had to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. So we got rid of that. That was a big, big thing. And by doing that, and we will always have, by the way, we're always protecting people with pre-existing conditions, and I can't say that more strongly, but we've been able to bring health care costs way down. Now, I took over Obamacare, got rid of the individual mandate, made it good, managed it much better. Remember, they had the $5 billion website disaster and all of the problems they had. The problem with Obamacare, it's not good. We'd like to terminate it, and we want a much less expensive health care that's a much better health care, and that's where we're aiming. And if we can do that, and we have a very good chance of doing it, but we've also brought down the price of Obamacare. The problem with Obamacare, it basically is never going to be great, and I want to give great health care.
Mr. President,
background that you have to reveal relative to the use of marijuana. And so there's a lot of things, but in addition to that, we got to change the system. I joined with a group of people in the House to provide for changing the system from punishment to rehabilitation. Along with a guy named Arlen Specter, who you may remember, I wrote the Second Chance Act.
In the meantime, an awful lot of people were jailed for minor drug crimes after the
Exactly right.
Was it a mistake to support it?
Yes, it was. But here's where the mistake came. The mistake came in terms of what the states did locally. What we did federally, we said it was, and you remember, George, it was all about the same time for the same crime. What I had done as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, took the 10 Circuit Courts of Appeals, took some really brilliant lawyers working for me in Judiciary. We did a study. And we determined what happens if, for the first, second, third offense, for any crime in the criminal justice system, at the federal level, if you're a black man, it's the first time you committed robbery. How long would you go to jail on average? If you're a white man, how long? Black man would go to jail on average 13 years. White man, 2 years. I go down the list of every single crime. So we set up a sentencing commission. We didn't set the time. Every single solitary maximum was reduced in there. But what happened was it became the same time for the same crime. So it said you have to serve between 1 and 3 years. They ended up becoming much lower. Black folks went to jail a lot less than they would have before, but it was a mistake.
Health care, much better and much less expensive.
let me get to question number 5, and you'll like this. He's stuck in traffic. His name is Joe White. He is registered as a Democrat. He says he's leaning toward Biden and voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And his question was, a second stimulus payment has been broadly agreed upon by the Republicans and Democrats, and yet now we're in October and it's still not passed. Why not use your office to make the second stimulus payment a separate targeted emergency relief package to help Americans weather the
Well,
pandemic.
we've actually passed 3 packages, and we're on our 4th, and I agree with him 100%. He should vote for me. The problem you have is Nancy Pelosi. She couldn't care less about the worker. She couldn't care less about our people, and we should have a stimulus, and I want a stimulus. The Republicans will approve a stimulus. The problem is she doesn't want to do it because she thinks it's bad for her election. The fact is she's wrong, because people know she's in our way. She's not approving it. She doesn't appreciate our people, and she doesn't appreciate at all our workers. Nancy Pelosi, we are ready to sign and pass stimulus, but she's got to.
People do not love the back and forth of Washington, but this has been a roller coaster. Back in early October, you one day tweeted, "No more negotiations until after Election Day. I'm walking away." Then I think the next couple of days you said, maybe we can do something targeted. Then you said, "I want a big, big bill." But then Senate Republicans said, "No, we're not for that." So you're the big deal maker. How come this is so, you yourself have changed positions?
Did you ever hear of a word called negotiation? We're negotiating, okay?
But people's lives are hanging in the balance.
And you know who I'm negotiating against? Nancy Pelosi, because she doesn't want to give the money. We should have stimulus. This was not our people's fault. This was China's fault. And she's penalized.
Study group made up of cops, social workers, as well as made up of the black community and the brown community, to sit down in the White House and over the next year come up with significant reforms that need to take place within communities. You have to bring them together. One of the things I've observed is, you know, the neighborhood I grew up in Claymont, you either became a cop, a firefighter, or a priest. I wasn't qualified much to do any one of them. But here's the deal, all kidding aside, most cops don't like bad cops.
Correct.
They don't like it.
That's correct.
And so what happens is they get intimidated into not reporting. So one of the things we do is there has to be transparency available. We have to be able to go in at the federal level, be able to go in and check out whether or not there's systematic problems within police departments. If in fact a cop needs to be tried, it's not the prosecutor in the community, in the district or there. You got to go outside the community to get another prosecutor to come in and handle the crime. There's a lot of things we've learned, and it takes time, but we can do this. You can ban chokeholds, you can, but beyond that, you have to teach people how to de-escalate circumstances. De-escalate. 60 million jobs. We were never even close to that number. We were just hitting 160 million jobs. Companies are pouring into our nation because of the tax rate. And if Biden comes in and raises taxes on everybody, including middle income taxes, which he wants to do, you will blow this thing and you'll end up with a depression, the likes of which you've never had. That's what's going to happen. We have something that's really good. The reason we're coming back so strong is because we built a very strong foundation. Companies are moving in. Car companies are moving into Michigan, into Ohio, into South Carolina and North Carolina just today. So what's happening is they're coming in because we reduced the taxes. Our taxes, our corporate taxes, were the highest in the world, and now they're among the lower taxes. They're not the lowest, but they're among the lowest. And what that means is jobs. But also, we're doing a very big, and we've done a very big middle-income tax package. So if we get in, we're going to do the middle-income tax package. But it's a great question. And if he comes along and raises rates, all those companies that are coming in, they will leave the U.S. so fast your head will spin. We can't let that happen.
On the subject of taxes, as you know, the New York Times has obtained, it says, years of your tax returns. Among other things, it says that you have debts of approximately $421 million that you have personally guaranteed and that will come due in the next 4 years. The question is, on behalf of voters, who do you owe $421 million
first of all,
to?
let me answer. What they did is illegal, number one. Also, the numbers are all wrong with the numbers they released. And just so you understand, when you have a lot of real estate, I have real estate, you know a lot of it, okay? Right down the road, Doral, big stuff, great stuff. I'm very when I decided to run, I'm very under-levered, fortunately, but I'm very under-levered. I have a very, very small percentage of debt compared, in fact, some of it I did as favors to institutions that wanted to loan me money. $400 million compared to the assets that I have, all of these great properties all over the world, and frankly, the Bank of America building in San Francisco. I don't love what's happening to San Francisco.
Well, do I hear you right? It sounds like you're saying $400 million isn't that much.
One of the biggest office buildings.
But are you confirming that yes, you do owe some $400 million?
What I'm saying is that it's a tiny percentage of my net worth.
That sounds like
and you'll see that soon because we're doing things. You know, we've given, I think it's 108 or 112 pages of financial detail to elections, and you know we have to file as the president, as any politician, you have to file. Nobody ever looks at that. When they do, they see how incredible the company is, but more importantly, they see where this debt is. No, I don't owe Russia money. I owe a very, very small, it's called mortgages. Yeah. People have a house, they put a mortgage.
Any foreign bank, any foreign entity?
Not that I know of, but I will probably, because it's so easy to solve, and if you'd like to do, I will let you know who I owe whatever small amount of money. I want to say two things. Number one, it's a very small amount of money. Number two, it's very straight. It's very, very straight. But it's a tiny percentage of the worth. Did you ever hear the expression under-levered?
Yeah.
I am extremely under-levered.
Well, here's the thing. You could clear this up tonight by just releasing your tax returns yourself. I mean, that's what I don't understand. I think people are just wondering.
As you know,
you're the only.
It turned out that I am under-audited.
But the
They
IRS
actually,
says
excuse me. No, but you
the IRS says that doesn't stop you from releasing.
Accused me of not being under-audited previously, and so did other people at NBC. And I am under-audited. So that was solved. That's good. I am under-audited. No person in their right mind would release prior to working out the deal with the IRS. And I'll go a step further. I'm treated very badly by the IRS. They treat me very, very badly. You have people in there from previous administrations. They treat me very badly. But we're under-audit. It's very routine in many ways, but we're under audit. They like to change the game, change the rules, do everything. You saw what they did with the Tea Party people. You saw what they did with the religious groups.
But to be clear, there is no law or rule that prohibits you from releasing your tax returns.
Except common sense and intelligence and having lawyers that say, because I would love to release them, and as soon as we come to a conclusion, I will release them, and very gladly. But if you go to elections, and if you take a look, you'll see 112, I think it's 112. It talks about the income, which is rather massive. It talks about all of the properties. They have them listed. You can never learn more. But you know what happened? People went there. All the reporters went. There was like a feeding frenzy. This was originally when I filed it. And I filed it every year. I update it every year. My son is here. They run the company. I don't run the company.
It also says that you paid $750 in taxes in the year you were elected.
Yeah,
is that true or not?
That's a statutory number. It's a statutory.
But is that true?
I think it's a filing number. You pay $750. It's a filing or a filing fee.
Most people here probably pay more.
No, I don't know. I can tell you this. If they have my tax returns, as you know, they have to go to jail. It's illegal. But their numbers were wrong. But let me tell you what else. I don't owe money to any of these sinister people. This has been going on for years now. Russia. It turned out to be a hoax. And it turned out to be that Hillary Clinton and the Democrats were dealing with Russia, not me. It's a whole hoax. So I would not mind at all saying who it is, but it's a very small. When you look at vast properties like I have, and they're big and they're beautiful and they're well located, when you look at that, the amount of money, $400 million, is a peanut. It's extremely under-levered. And it's levered with normal banks. Not a big deal.
All right, let's take a break. We'll get more voter questions right after this.
Advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint judges of the Supreme Court and all other officers of the United States. From the Constitution Center in Philadelphia, here again, George Stephanopoulos.
And the Supreme Court is our next topic. The questioner, Nathan Osborne of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Democrat.
Hi, I'm George, Mr. Vice President.
Hey, Nathan.
Our country's first Supreme Court gave its first rulings just 2 blocks from here, from 1791 to 1800, and it's become more polarized since then. Merrick Garland didn't get a hearing for all of 2016, and Amy Coney Barrett's being pushed through at the last minute, even though millions have already voted. So what do you think about ideas from people like Pete Buttigieg and others to put in place safeguards that will help ensure more long-term balance and stability? And what do you say to LGBTQ Americans and others who are very worried right now about erosions of their rights and our democracy as a whole?
Well, let me start the last point, work my way back. I think there's great reason to be concerned. I was on the road most of the time during these hearings, so I didn't hear many of them. I just got the recaps when I'd get in late at night. I've been going around the country, Florida, and anyway. And but my reading online, what the judge said was she didn't answer very many questions at all. And I don't even think she has laid out much of a judicial philosophy in terms of the basis upon which she thinks are there unenumerated rights in the Constitution and the rest. So, number one. So I think there's great reason to be concerned for the LGBT community, something I fought very hard for a long time, to make sure there's equality across the board. Number two, I think that also healthcare overall is very much in jeopardy as a consequence of the president's going to go directly after this election, directly to the Supreme Court within a month to try to get Obamacare wiped out after 10 million people have already lost their insurance from their employer, and wants to take 20 million people out of the system as well, plus 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. So there's a lot at stake. I don't think it's appropriate. I think the Constitution implies, there's no provision in the Constitution. My problem is I made a mistake of teaching constitutional law for 21 years and the separation of powers. The Constitution implies that the way the people have a right to determine who's going to be on the court is how they vote for their senators and their president. We seek the advice and consent of the Senate and the
president's president for all 4 years, isn't he?
No, he is. But once an election begins, by implication, it is inconsistent with the constitutional principles, in my view. You get disagreement among scholars on this. But I believe it's inconsistent when millions of people already voted to put someone on the court. I think it should have been held until this election is over, see what the makeup of the Senate is going to be. If the president wins this election, he should be able to go
How about that question of expanding the court? Here's what you said exactly 1 year ago tonight at a Democratic debate. You said, I would not get into court packing. I would not pack the court. That's not what you're saying now. Is the nomination of Judge Barrett reason enough to rethink your position?
What I wanted to do, George, if I had answered the question directly, then all the focus would be on what's Biden going to do if he wins, instead of on, is it appropriate what is going on now? And it should stay, this is the thing that the president loves to do, always take our eye off the ball. What's at stake? One of the things Pete
Sugar, he voted for Clinton in 2016. He's registered as a Democrat and says he's supporting Biden. Adam, take it away.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Adam.
4 years ago, Senate leadership said it was inappropriate to push through a nominee in an election year. Yet they fast-tracked your nominee for the Supreme Court just today. The question I have for you is, what do you say to the voter that thinks it's hypocritical to act in that manner and that they can't trust Republicans' word?
So when I was elected, and when a president is elected, they're elected for a period of 4 years. And Justice Ginsburg said it best, I think, talking about President Obama having to do with somebody else, that the president is put there for 4 years, not for 3 years. So during this fourth year, it happened to come up, unfortunately, because I had great respect for Justice Ginsburg, but a vacancy happened to come up, and we picked somebody that's outstanding. She has been an absolute star. And I'm extremely proud of it. But again, plenty of time. I mean, there's plenty of time. We're going to do it before the election, but we also have much time after the election, but there's no reason to wait because it's almost unanimous, it seems to me, certainly within the Republican Party and frankly, most of the Democrats within closed rooms. I guarantee you that this is an outstanding person. And I'm using my fourth term. And if you look at it, that if you put the shoe on the other foot, if they had this, they would do it 100%. So there's been 29 times when this has happened. All 29 times a president has done exactly what I've done.
You said so many times during the campaign, all through the course of your career, it's important to level with
It is,
American
but George,
people.
if I say, no matter what answer I gave you, if I say it, that's the headline tomorrow. It won't be about what's going on now, the improper way they're proceeding.
But don't voters have a right to know where you stand?
They do have a right to know where they stand. They'll have a right to know where I stand before they vote.
So you'll come out with a clear position before Election Day?
Yes, depending on how they handle this. But look, what you should do is you got to make sure you vote. And vote for a senator who, in fact, reflects your general view on constitutional interpretation. and vote for a president who think is more in line with you. And if you oppose the position that I would not have appointed her, but if you oppose my position, vote for Trump. Vote for a Republican who shares that view. But that's your opportunity to get involved in lifetime appointments that presidents come and go. Justices stay and stay and stay.
We have a question from a Republican, Andrew Lewis. I guess a disaffected Republican. You cast a write-in vote for John Kasich in 2016. You're going to vote against President Trump this year.
And John's writing in for me, by the way.
I know that. Mr. Vice President.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Vice President, my father, Drew Lewis, served as Secretary of Transportation under President Ronald Reagan in his first term.
Oh, yeah. I'll be darned.
And some of his closest allies and friends were Democrats, including House Speaker Tip O'Neill and Senator Ted Kennedy. Sadly, today we have highly partisan and dysfunctional governance, and I believe President Trump is primarily responsible for creating this toxic environment. As president, how will you avoid the temptation to exact revenge and instead take the high road and attempt to restore bipartisanship, civility, and honor to our democracy?
As written by a fellow who won the Pulitzer Prize for a book he wrote about the presidency, he said, you know, I doubt whether Biden is really Irish. He doesn't hold a grudge. In politics, grudges don't work. They make no sense. I really mean it. I have never, and the second point I'd make is, everybody talks about, yeah, Joe, when you were a senator and a chairman of foreign relations or chairman of judiciary, you got a lot of things done. You're able to cross the aisle, but the days are changed. When you're vice president, you got a lot.
In 2016, she is a registered Republican. Her name is Mariah Green. Mariah, what's your question?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President. I'm honored to be with you here tonight, sir, so thank you. I'm a pro-life millennial, and my question for you today is, if Roe v. Wade is ultimately overturned in the future, what protections would be put in place or kept for where the mother's life is in jeopardy in relation to high-risk pregnancies?
Well, again, I'm not ruling on this, and Roe v. Wade is something that a lot of people would say, obviously, you're going to speak to somebody. I also, two other great justices, Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh, I never spoke to them about Roe v. Wade. I never spoke to them about election laws. I never spoke to them about anything. And I've done the right thing from a moral standpoint. I don't even know from a legal standpoint, but it was the right thing. I think, depending on what happens with Roe v. Wade, I think that perhaps it could get sent down to the states, and the states would decide. I also think perhaps nothing will happen. I have not talked to her about it. I think it would be inappropriate to talk to her about it. And some people would say you can talk to her about it. I just think it would be inappropriate.
But what is your...
Things where there's bipartisan consensus. Last example I'll give you. You know, after after Trump had been elected, named the next president, wasn't sworn in yet, I've been working on a thing called a bill relating to cancer cures. Okay? And it was called the Cancer Moonshot. And I worked with a number of Democrats and Republicans, and we had a bill that was about $9 billion that made significant increases in research and development on cancer alternatives, NIH, and particularly specific cancer initiatives. And we only had, at the time, I think it was 111 or 114, whatever it was, votes in the House. I don't hold me the exact number. And we had fewer than 40 in the Senate. But after he was elected, I got those people together as vice president, and we sat down and we worked it out. And we ended up getting it passed 396 votes in the House and 94 votes in the Senate. And at the end of the day, because it had to do with the Biden cancer moonshot I've been working on, Mitch McConnell stood up, and I was presiding officer, and moved to name the bill after my deceased son, Bo, who had just died. So there are ways to bring this together.
But how about the question of political...
What's your question?
Good evening, Savannah. Good evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
As the mother of a young male of color, I have reason to respect authority, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also out of fear that he may face profiling or be considered a criminal. As an educator, I've also had similar conversations with my high school students. Mr. President, what will you and your administration do to better prepare our law enforcement officers to work in collaboration with the communities that they serve, and also to protect the lives of innocent Black and Latinos from police brutality and injustice?
Right. I fully understand the question, and I saw everything that you saw over the summer, and it was a terrible thing to watch. We were very strongly, we have a senator named Tim Scott from South Carolina. He came up with a bill that should have been approved. It was great. It was a bill that was strong in terms of law enforcement and strong in terms of enforcing the proper thing and doing the proper thing by law enforcement. And the Democrats just wouldn't go for it. They wouldn't go for it at all. And I don't know why, because it was a really great bill. But I do have to say this. And some people don't like it when I say it, but a lot of people agree. I have done more for the African American community than any president, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, historically Black colleges and universities. I got them funded. They were on a year-to-year basis. They could have been put out of business. As soon as our country had a little bad year, they would have said, I'm sorry, we're not going to fund you. I got them 10-year funding and financing, and more than they even asked for. I became very friendly with a lot of the heads. But we've done more, and of course, opportunity zones. But criminal justice reform, everybody said it could not be done. President Obama and Biden never even tried to do it. They never even tried. But I say that, and I say it often, I'll say it loud, and I'm very proud of it. And I have a great relationship because of what I've done with the African American community. I'm very proud of it.
Let's go to our next question. We have Paulette Dale. She leans slightly to Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Republican. Paulette, what's your question?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
I have to say, you have a great smile.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, he does. You're so handsome when you smile. Okay. As the daughter of immigrants to the United States who fled Eastern Europe due to religious persecution, the United States immigration policies are very personal for me.
Right.
Surveys show that most Americans and the majority of Republicans support the Dreamers program. So my question for you, Mr. President, is if you are elected to a second term, do you expect to pursue your previous efforts to cut the DACA program?
Yeah.
Why or why not?
And the DACA is somewhat different than Dreamers. You understand that, and you understand it better than anybody probably in this room. Where do you come from, by the way, originally? Where?
My grandparents were from Russia and Poland.
That's very good. Okay. So we are going to take care of DACA. We're going to take care of Dreamer. It's working right now. We're negotiating different aspects of immigration and immigration law. We've built now over 400 miles of border wall, southern border. Mexico's working very closely with us. We have the strongest border we've ever had. We want people to come into our country. They have to come in legally. But we are working very hard on the DACA program, and you will be, I think, very happy over the course of the next year.
Thank you.
Because I feel the same way as you do about it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, in point of fact, the DACA program, there are, under your administration, no new applicants are allowed. And in fact, the DACA recipients now have to renew every year as opposed to every 2 years. So in fact, the DACA program has been curtailed by your administration.
Well, what happened is because of the pandemic, much changed on the immigration front. Mexico is heavily infected, as you know, and we've made it very, very difficult to come in because of the pandemic and other reasons, and crime. But we have a very strong border right now, and we have to keep it that way. But we want people to come into our country, but they have to come in through a merit system, and they have to come in legally. And people are very, very happy with it. You haven't heard any complaints about that. But what happened is because of the pandemic, we have to be extra cautious.
You have been promising this immigration bill since, well, at least July, when you told my colleague on Telemundo it was coming, but nothing's come yet.
It's very happy. The fact is, we got rid of catch and release, which is a disaster. You know, you catch somebody, they could be a murderer, they could be a rapist, and we're supposed to release them into our country. These are the laws that I inherited. We ended that program. Now, I think you're going to see something very, very good. The whole immigration, if you look at what's going on, people used to pour into our country, and especially during the pandemic, I think even you, Savannah, will be very impressed.
Sir, we have about 30 seconds left. I think about people sitting out there tonight. There are some who love you. Some of them are sitting right around here, and some who will never vote for you. But there are people in the middle. There are people who aren't sure.
That's right.
There are people who want to know why they should give you a second chance and how you might improve in a second term. 30 seconds, what would you say to them?
Because they've done a great job. We have the strongest economy in the world. We closed it up. We are coming around the corner. The vaccines are coming out soon, and our economy is strong. We are at a level with jobs like we've never been before. We've rebuilt our military. We've rebuilt our borders. We had no borders. We had no nothing. We've rebuilt so much. We've given you the greatest tax cut in the history of our country, greatest regulation cut, equally as important, and we created new levels of jobs that nobody thought was possible. And next year is going to be better than ever before.
I got to leave it there.
Former Vice President Joe Biden, we're going to look at the environment right now. We're going to get a question from Michelle Elisen from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a businesswoman, a social worker. You're a Republican who's voted for Democrats, but you're not sure what you're going to do this time around. Correct?
Correct. Greetings, former Vice President Biden.
Hello.
Thank you, Mr. Stephanopoulos. In a 2012 report of the University of Pittsburgh's Institute of Politics, fracking was discussed and its possible implications for the waterways from the Commonwealth to the Gulf. Fracking has made the population sick and killed wildlife in southwest Pennsylvania. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and small business development centers have already begun to transition people away from fossil fuels. What industries that are not harmful to human health and the environment are you planning for southwest Pennsylvania and the nation?
Well, first of all, I make it clear I do not propose banning fracking. I think you have to make sure that fracking is in fact not emitting methane or polluting the well or dealing with what can be small earthquakes and how they're drilling. So it has to be managed very, very well, number one. Number two, what we have to do is the future rests in renewable energy. The single fastest growing energy source in the world right now, because I'm going to say something that's going to sound self-serving, but I managed the Recovery Act, and I was able to invest billions of dollars into bringing down the cost per BTU of wind and solar. So now it's cheaper than coal, it's cheaper than oil right now. And it has great, great promise. And it's also the fastest growing employer in the energy industry. And so there are a number of things that I would do immediately. Number one, there are well over 100,000 wells that are left uncapped in the region. We could hire 128,000 of these people who are working in the industry to cap these wells and get a good salary doing it now, number one. Number two, we should be moving toward finding the new technologies that are going to be able to deal with carbon capture. So ultimately, as a transition, we moved to a net zero emission of carbon, that we're still going to be able to use, if we find the right technology, some gas to be able to, if we can carbon capture. And I think we're going to be able to move in a direction where by the year 2035, we'll be able to have net zero emissions of carbon from the creation of energy creation. So we can move it by dealing with those. And every time we talk about global warming or the environment, the president thinks it's a joke, and I think it's jobs. Because what we're going to have happen is, you'll be able to see now, as I started to say before, I as president am going to invest that $600 billion we spend in government contracts only on those things that in fact also are not only made in America, but building an infrastructure that's clean and new. And what we have to do is focus on the transmission of energy across the country from areas relating to solar and wind. The reason is that that has not been mastered yet. I met a lot of people in Silicon Valley. The battery technology is increasing significantly, so you're going to be able to have, for example, solar on your home and a battery the size this by this, as I'm showing you here, in your basement. So when the sun doesn't shine for 5 days, you still have enough energy. So we're making significant progress. The other thing we're going to do is provide an awful lot of work. It's estimated to put close to 1 million people to work by weatherizing 4 million buildings and 2 million homes, because we'll save tons and tons of energy, or like billions of barrels of energy over time, and at the same time provide significant employment and a good union wages, prevailing wages.
Let me stick on fracking for a second. You said you don't want to ban fracking. As you know, it's an important issue here in Pennsylvania. Not everyone buys your denial. A member of the Boilermakers Local 154, Sean Stephanie, was quoted in the New York Times today saying, "You can't have it both ways." He says you can't meet your goal to end fossil fuels without ending fracking. What do you say to people like Sean who doubt your denial because they think you want to keep that promise?
Tell them the Boilermakers overwhelmingly endorse me, okay? So the Boilermakers union has endorsed me because I sat down with them in great detail with their leadership exactly what I would do, number one. Number two, what I would do is I would stop giving tax breaks and subsidizing oil. We don't need to subsidize oil any longer, number one. We should stop that and save billions of dollars over time. What I would also do with regard to, the difference between me and the new Green Deal, they say automatically by 2030, we're going to be carbon free. Not possible.
So are you for it or against it? You say you're not for it, but in your website it says you call it a crucial framework. The Green Deal.
My deal is a crucial framework, but not the new Green Deal. The new Green Deal calls for elimination of all non-renewable energy by 2030. You can't get there. You're going to need to be able to transition, George, to be able to transition to get to the place where we invest in new technologies that allow us to do things that get us to a place where we get to net zero emission, including in agriculture. I've laid out a detailed plan. We should be taking the plan where we allow significant more land to be put in conservation, planting deep-rooted plants which absorb carbon from the air, and in fact pay farmers to do it. We can do things like pelletize all the chicken manure and all the horse manure and cow manure, and they can take out the methane and use it as fertilizer and make a lot of money doing it. For example, right now down in people, when I say that, they wonder what I'm talking about. The biggest carbon sink in the world is the Amazon. More carbon absorbed from the air, diminishing global warming, in the Amazon than all the carbon emitted on a yearly basis from the United States of America, from all vehicles and all means. So we have to use our imaginations. We have to move in the direction as well, providing for electric vehicles. Electric vehicles will save billions of gallons of oil, create, estimated, not me, Wall Street, 1 million automobile jobs. But we're lagging. We're not investing. We're not doing any of the research.
Got to take another quick break. We'll be right back.
ABC News, straightforward. It's being called the most consequential election of a lifetime, the most important vote, and with so much on the line, it demands the most straightforward news-making, real answers, the most informed voices from all sides. The countdown is on to the vote. What will our future look like? ABC's This Week with George. It all plays out right here every Sunday.
The most consequential week yet of this hyper-political year.
Right as you get closer to casting your vote every Sunday on ABC.
What is necessary? Praising Judge Barrett's performance in the Supreme Court confirmation hearings this week. Here he is on that.
How good is Amy? How good is Amy? It's happening. They said he should not be able to do this. I said, why? I'm in my 4th year. She's been flawless. She hasn't made a mistake. She's toying with those Democrat evil people. They're evil.
Kelly, could Judge Barrett's confirmation help or hurt the president with female voters?
Potentially, it could go either way depending on your point of view, but Amy Coney Barrett certainly comported herself well, and there is certainly a lot of happiness among Republicans about how she weathered the very difficult process of the confirmation hearings. There are questions, of course, from the Democratic side about what her views might be and if her position on the court could threaten things like the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, also Roe v. Wade. She would not give opinions about things that could come before the court. She would not give policy opinions. Her personal history and writing she's done in the past have given Democrats concern, but her selection is certainly something that the president can tout for his voters and for what he promised Americans he would do, selecting judges from a list that he had made public and doing that in a way that would support a federal bench that is more conservative. He's had the opportunity to do now 3 of these nominations to the court. The scheduling at this point looks like, if all goes as planned in the Senate, a final vote on her confirmation would come right before the election. And one of the pluses for the White House is there were no big surprises. With the Kavanaugh confirmation, there was a lot of surprise and all of it controversial. With Amy Coney Barrett, she answered all of the questions, at least she provided answers. They may not have been satisfactory to Democrats, but she did not cause any controversy to erupt. And many people thought she seemed accessible and intelligent and capable. And so in many ways, her performance as a nominee has been a help to the White House. And certainly people have different views on where she may fall in shifting the court to the conservative side. But that's something that President Trump said he would do and is trying to do it with her nomination.
Kelly, the president has a town hall tonight on NBC News, moderated by our colleague Savannah Guthrie. Dr. Fauci says the president is not a threat to transmit the virus. In spite of that, what safety precautions will there be tonight?
Well, there will be social distancing and testing done for all the people who are participating. And what we've been told by the White House physicians and then an independent review of the president's test results is that he is no longer shedding contagious virus that could infect others. And based on his symptoms and his status right now, that he does not pose a threat. So still trying to be mindful of those concerns. It will be an outdoor event and it will be spaced. The president has, on the one hand, here we go again with one hand and another. He says he wants this audience and wants this chance to speak in a town hall format to reach a wider audience, and yet critical of NBC for providing this town hall format because he complains that when another program like this was done with Joe Biden, he says the questions were not tough enough. So the president both embracing and complaining about tonight's town hall. Allison?
Kelly O'Donnell, it is something we have seen from him a few times before, I think. Thanks so much for the latest from D.C.
Welcome back to our town hall with former Vice President Joe Biden. The next question comes from Mark Hoffman, Center Valley, Pennsylvania, conservative who voted for Trump in 2016.
Welcome to Pennsylvania, Mr. Vice President.
Good to be back home. I'm from Pennsylvania.
Yes, I know. Scranton, right?
Yep.
So, peace is breaking out all over the world. Our troops are coming home. Serbia is talking to Kosovo. And the Arabs and Israelis are talking peace, which I believe is a modern-day miracle, what's going on. Does President Trump's foreign policy deserve some credit?
A little, but not a whole lot. We find ourselves in a position where we're more isolated in the world than we've ever been. Our allies are our goat alone. America first has made America alone. You have Iran closer to having enough nuclear material to build a bomb. North Korea has more bombs and missiles available to it. We find ourselves where our NATO allies are publicly saying they can't count on us. We're in a situation as well where in the Far East, we find ourselves in the Western Pacific, where we're isolated as well. You have Japan and South Korea at odds with one another. China is making moves. So I would say we find ourselves less secure than we've been. I do compliment the president on the deal with Israel recently, but if you take a look, we're not very well trusted around the world. When 17 major nations in the world were asked who they trust more, who's the better leader, and the president came in behind both the national survey, international survey, both behind Putin as well as Xi. And look what Putin's doing. You know, you have Americans, bounties on American military's heads in Afghanistan. There are more people there now, by the way, than when we left in Afghanistan. And we find ourselves in a situation where he spoke to Putin 6 times, hadn't said a word to him. And NATO is on the risk of beginning to crack because they doubt our concern whether we're there. You see what's happening in everything from Belarus to Poland to Hungary, and the rise of totalitarian regimes in the world, and as well as this president embraces all the thugs in the world. I mean, he's best friends with the leader of North Korea, sending love letters. He doesn't take on Putin in any way, and he is just he's learned the art of the steal from the art of the deal by Xi in China. So I would respectfully suggest, no, there is no plan, no coherent plan for foreign policy. You know, we've always ruled. We've been most effective as a world leader, in my humble opinion, not just by the exercise of our power, the most powerful nation in the world, but the power of our example. That's what's led the rest of the world to follow us on almost everything. He's pulled out of almost every international organization. He gets laughed at when he goes to the, literally, not figuratively, when he goes to the United Nations. I mean, it's not about the president per se, it's about the nation and the lack of respect that's shown to us.
I want to get one more question in this segment, and it comes from Mika Hack. She's from State College, Pennsylvania. This is your first presidential election that you're voting.
Yes.
Hi, Mika. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm the proud mom of 2 girls, 8 and 10. My youngest daughter is transgender. The Trump administration has attacked the rights of transgender people, banning them from military service, weakening non-discrimination protections, and even removing the word transgender from some government websites. How will you, as president, reverse this dangerous and discriminatory agenda and ensure that the lives and rights of LGBTQ people are protected under U.S. law?
I will flat out just change the law. Eliminate those executive orders, number 1. You may recall, I'm the guy who said, I was raised by a man who, I remember I was being dropped off. My dad was a high school educated, well-read man who was a really decent guy, and I was being dropped off to get an application in the center of our city, Wilmington, Delaware, the corporate capital of the world at the time. And these 2 men, I'm getting out to get an application to be a lifeguard in the African American community because there was a big swimming pool complex. And these 2 men, well dressed, leaned up and hugged one another and kissed one another. And I'm getting out of the car at the light, and I turned to my dad. My dad looked at me and said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other. The idea that an 8-year-old child or a 10-year-old child decides, you know, I decided I want to be transgender. That's what I think I'd like to be. It'll make my life a lot easier. There should be 0 discrimination. And what's happening is too many transgender women of color are being murdered. They're being murdered. I mean, I think it's up to now 17. Don't hold me to that number, but it's higher now.
Yeah.
And that's just this year. And so I promise you, there is no reason to suggest that there should be any right denied your daughter or daughters, whichever, if 1 or 2, one, your daughter, that your other daughter has a right to be and do. None. 0. And by the way, my son Bo passed away, was the Attorney General of the state of Delaware. He was the guy who got the first transgender law passed in the state of Delaware, and because of a young man who became a woman who worked for him in the Attorney General's office.
We've got one more segment coming up. Thank you.
And I'm proud of
back.
ABC News.